That's
Hi.
unfortunate. Well, we're
Oh, looks like
live now.
right. Being live
So
is not unfortunate. That's previous conversation.
yeah, we're just upset that Jeremy can't drink coffee. Um, it's
He's upset. Oh, no,
oh
he's
yeah. Well,
upset.
I'm not upset. I'm just glad that God doesn't hate me like that. Um, so all right. Well, welcome everyone to the last cocktail apocalypse of the year. Jeremy, how are you
Yay!
doing? Thank you for
I'm doing
joining.
great. It's been a
Awesome.
very interesting year.
Yeah, hasn't it though? And
May you live in it.
Stephanie, how are you?
Hi. Hi, I'm peachy. I'm great.
Yeah. Well, I'm just ducky. Um, so we're going to look at some of the apocalyptic events, revelatory events of 2024. And we thought that probably the best place to begin was with the United States election. Because it certainly seems apocalyptic. And
Hmm.
I think that it is something that is going to affect the entire world.
Hmm.
So it's not just, regional. Um, and a lot of people I know had different reactions in a sense of this time around from what happened in
Hmm.
2016. And I don't know. How did both of you feel when this happened?
A large disappointment.
Mm,
I figured it'd be a tight race. I knew there's a lot of Trump supporters out there. I figured it'd be a tight race, but I really thought that Harris was going to pull it out by a short margin.
mm,
But the thing that was really disappointing was how many people are still Trump supporters.
mm,
That was my big disappointment. And it was almost heartbreaking to realize that, yeah, this is the America I live in.
mm. Steph, how about you?
Yeah, boy, did I call that wrong, right? I really thought that that Harris would pull that out. I think that it was a shock to a lot of people to find out that there were so many more Trump supporters. But I also think with, if we're looking at this in apocalyptic sort of way, a lot of people felt betrayed. A lot of people felt deeply hurt by it, deeply hurt by people voting against them. Like the
Mm,
LGBTQ community felt that.
Hmm.
Women, a lot of women felt that. A lot of people of color felt that. Um, and what we seem to be experiencing are a lot of people who are going no contact with
Hmm.
people who voted
mm,
for Trump. And it's all over the news. I think like we've all seen the leopards ate my face, and we all have seen the the fuck around and find out.
Hmm.
yeah.
That's two big memes going on there, and so a lot of people are just feeling like they're done with
Hmm.
relatives, they're done with
Mm,
friends, and a lot of people, and they're just turning away from them because that hurt ran deep.
Right.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I had my initial response was a lot of suspicion. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that I don't want to delve into conspiracy theory, but um, I just found it radically difficult to accept that a what someone who's been found guilty in 34 felony counts, sexual
mhm,
assault, who attempted to overthrow the previous election, that was
Hmm.
impeached twice, who was under investigation and who was facing court charges, some very serious charges, who had a vested interest in winning, won.
Hmm.
And it's like I just didn't trust it. And there's some really good reporting, especially Greg Palast, who showed that there was a massive voter suppression, and there was a group, True the Vote, that was challenging people their right to vote. One woman alone challenged over 30,000 people and had them removed from the voter lists.
Right. And this was online, right?
What do you mean?
this all happened online. She didn't challenge them individually face to face. She went online and
No, no,
submitted.
it wasn't
Yeah,
that. It wasn't even that it was online. She just submitted to the election boards because apparently this is something that is legal in almost every state. There are a few states where it's not, but you can challenge, say, I don't think this person is actually living, or
Mhm.
that they don't live where they claim to live. They had access to the voter rolls, and this affected primarily minority communities.
mm,
So there's very good, that I think there's the evidence for that, but all of that
right.
happened legally, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm still suspicious. I'm still very suspicious of things, but I also think it's important to note that there's no mandate. This wasn't an overwhelming victory.
Mhm.
So when
Right.
we talk about the people who support Trump, I think the margin now is like 1.4%
Hmm.
was the victory
Mhm.
that he had. But the reality is that more people voted for someone else.
Right. Right.
You know,
And
um,
and I think what's also strange is the bullet vote,
yes,
where people go in to vote and they will only go in to vote for basically one thing,
yeah,
and everything else is blank, or you know,
hmm yeah,
it's not really paid
yeah,
attention to. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people split ticketing.
hmm
They were voting for, like in North Carolina, I
yeah.
believe
Every single
everyone else,
Democrat, almost every
every
Democrat.
Democrat won except for president. And
Yeah,
I think that was like, wow, that's very strange, but it's also might be indicative of simply people, the economy,
yeah,
people, the perception of the economy being very bad, and wanting a change at that level.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
But thank you for saying the perception of the economy, because the economy is actually
mhm,
pretty good.
For some, for some.
for
Um,
some, yeah, I will say, like, a
When
lot
we're
of
talking
people
about the
talking
economy,
about of
we're talking
inflation
about the
being,
overall.
yeah, I think inflation well, it's come down
Hmm.
in
It's
terms
almost
of,
ideal.
but the prices haven't gone down. They
Correct.
right.
They
stayed
have
at
not.
that high level, and people can't afford things. That's true enough. We can't,
Right.
I don't think that can be ignored.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, overall, things are coming down. More jobs are added,
Hmm.
so
Right. And that's just it. The prices won't come down
mhm,
because once people get used to paying this, why would the companies lower them?
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that it was the election itself was revelatory. And even though I have suspicions, and I thought that Harris did a good job with the campaign in the time that she had. But yet there were a lot of issues, and I think that there's some like shadow stuff going on in the sense that there was no Democratic primary. And when Biden stepped down, it was just Harris kind of stepped in. But, no primary, that's very undemocratic. That's not democratic at all. And
Hmm.
yet, one of the primary messages that the Democrats had, and I agree with them on this, was that Trump is want to be fascist and very anti-democratic, but you've got, a party that wasn't being very democratic, pointing fingers at the other party. That's shadow projection,
Hmm.
it seems to me. And I think that, I've been going back and forth between kind of despair and absolute terror at what's coming our way.
Hmm.
And we can talk about some of that terror here in a moment. But at the same time, in a weird way, kind of hope that, because just looking at people online and the comments, I mean, I'm not the only one to be suspicious. Um, I know there's some people were saying, Biden can't allow this to happen. We need to save the democracy. And I would point out, I'm like, but in order to do that, he has to be anti-democratic.
Yes.
And you can't say it's a paradox. You can't save the democracy by being anti-democratic. But I get the sense, I get the feeling, because I keep thinking, where's the adult in the room? That is going to prevent this from happening. Because I feel like an adult, being like trapped and I can't move or do anything, and I'm watching this kid run towards like a light socket with a fork, and it's like. I know it's going to happen,
Yeah.
but I can't do anything to stop it. And it seems to me that if Biden were to do something, which I don't think he will, that would lead to civil war.
Mm-hmm.
But, then we have the Trump group saying that they're going to send troops to especially blue states and blue cities.
Mm-hmm.
That can lead to war too. I don't see an easy way out of this at all.
Yeah, because he's basically saying what he's going to send in the National Guard to the blues for open cities, which allow immigrants into the cities. And if you have the governors opposing the president, the federal government, that can certainly cause a lot of upheaval. And we're in Denver, which is an open city, so that is terrifying to me. What's going to happen with that, and I think this all goes, and not just that, but his cabinet appointees are there to tear apart the Department of Education, the
FDIC,
FDIC, so many things that are just. He's putting people in place to tear it apart.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's terrifying to people. The mass deportations he's been talking about. That's terrifying. Because he wants to end birthright citizenship, which he's saying is for people who have been undocumented, came here, have children, and those children, right? But once you end birthright citizenship, who has citizenship?
Right. What defines citizen?
So it's terrifying for immigrants. It's terrifying for all the people he said he would go after.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, he can't do that without altering the Constitution. I mean,
and
he has no regard for the Constitution. That's absolutely clear. And I think what's terrifying also about this is that the Supreme Court over the summer were like, they can, president can do pretty much whatever they want. And Trump's gonna, I don't think he's the smartest, person on the planet, but he's smart enough to know that he can do whatever he wants I've never seen anyone who can get away with so much. I keep waiting. It's like, the Greeks have told us over and over and over that hubris will get you in the end. And I keep waiting, where are the gods? Where are they to knock this guy on his ass?
Right. Where's the bolt from heaven?
Yeah. And so, we're talking about this as being kind of apocalyptic in a sense. And let's talk a little bit about, we can talk about his junk drawer, the cabinet he's assembling. Well, it's pretty bad. This is, I was furious when I learned that they wanted to get rid of the FDIC. Do they not have any understanding of history? Of the Great Depression? And isn't it kind of what we see now? Isn't that what was sort of going on in the 1920s, right before the Great Depression?
Right, including the application of tariffs.
Yeah. So I think that the thing that gives me hope, and I don't know, but it's the leopards ate my face. You see a lot of things and there are a lot of, there's I've been watching one channel called Dark Brandon, which is kind of showing things in a animated, but then you see the real person with these responses that, people are, the Trump voters are like, well, wait a minute, you mean I'm going to have to pay for these tariffs? And it was reported that that was the number one search item on Google after the election, tariffs. And it's like, you couldn't do that beforehand?
Right.
Well, that same thing happened with Brexit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when England or the UK moved from the European Union, they moved out. The very first thing everyone Googled was, what's Brexit?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't help you right now, does it? You've already voted for it.
Yeah.
There's no mulligans
Yeah. Well,
unless
Another
you're in
interesting-
France, I guess.
Mhm. Another interesting thing post-election was the spike in the number of searches for how do I change my vote.
mm,
There was a huge spike
wow.
because suddenly people are realizing, what the hell did I just do? Or,
Yeah. My only hope, and it does actually give me hope, and this will tie into something else I think we'll talk about later, is that things will be so bad that people will actually start coming together to challenge all of this, to try to preserve what is left of the nation. Because when the tariffs kick in, that's going to have a global effect. I don't think people really understand how bad that's going to be. There are reports, I'm terrified that I'm going to lose my health care because I get the Affordable Care Act. And then there are all these reports where people are like, well, yeah, I like that. I just hate Obamacare. And they're like, do you not understand? These are the same thing.
They do not.
Well, they will.
They will. They will.
Yep.
I've often said that I wish stupidity was painful, but it's going to be painful. And, the problem is it's going to affect the rest of us.
Right. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
But
my thought here is that, though, in regards to hope, is that there's been, and it really didn't matter who was in charge, a lot of rot in the system. That's
Yes.
true enough.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, one of the reasons they gravitated towards Trump was because of the problems, the systemic problems that have been here for decades and decades. It doesn't really matter, Democrat, Republican, we've had these problems. And I think with the Trump administration coming in with these idea of tariffs, deportations, ending just about everything, I think what we will have is this kind of horrible chance to right the ship.
Yeah.
To knock down the things that need knocked down and bring in something better at some point. But that's something that requires a lot of pain, right?
Yeah.
It's not until everyone really feels it that people start fighting for their rights, fighting for survival. And that, as terrible as it is, might be what will help us in the end.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yep. It's only when they see what leopard in your face really feels like. And that's one of the things they've done. They've done these studies that show that the biggest defining characteristic between a conservative and a liberal is empathy. Well, liberals tend to have more empathy towards other people, while conservatives tend to just think about themselves. If it doesn't affect me, then I don't need to care about it.
How Christian of them.
There's that.
Yeah. So, to Stephanie's point, I couldn't agree more. It's like there are issues with American education.
Yes.
And, the statistic is that the average American reads at a 6th grade level.
Yep.
And that's what, a 12-year-old?
Mm-hmm.
That's the understanding that most people have, is the reading comprehension of a 12-year-old. And of course, if that's the case, things are going to be bad. And we need to have education to compete in the world and to run a government. And so, yes, education needs to be addressed. I am fearful of the education system being under the control of the woman who used to be in charge of the World Wrestling Entertainment, who's also,
Oh,
one of
wait
the
a minute.
people.
I saw her take on a body slam.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
On,
gosh, so she
yeah.
can handle
I
a
mean,
teenager or two.
yeah, she could
yeah. Let's
handle it.
have her, control a room full of hyper, 6-year-olds.
Right.
But I mean, Betty DeVos wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But this woman has zero qualifications. She apparently served 1 year or about a year on the Connecticut State Board of Education, but that's it. But she and her husband have been under investigation for allegedly allowing a sex assault on young boys to continue.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
That seems to actually be part of the job requirements to be part of his cabinet, is to either have been charged with sexual assault or just to be filthy rich.
Right.
This is
And donate to the campaign.
this is the wealthiest cabinet ever.
Yes.
It's well, if you even not keeping Musk in the equation, this is
Yeah.
billionaires and millionaires
Mm-hmm.
who don't care about people living in the Midwest. They don't care
Right.
about us. They only care about enriching themselves.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
like they're looting the Capitol at the end of days.
Yep. Yep.
That's time to loot. I mean,
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Well, I did not vote for Elon Musk. No one voted for Elon Musk.
Right.
Or what is it? Vivek Ramaswamy, the Department
Yep.
of Government Efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dr. Oz.
Right.
Not only is this like a cabinet of millionaires and billionaires and the incompetent, but it seems like it's a season of Celebrity Apprentice.
Yes.
I've been thinking that for a while. It's how is it different?
Yeah.
Right. And Trump has a reputation for picking the best people. I say that with a little tongue in cheek, right? But that was one of the things they said the first time around. Oh, he doesn't have to know because he picks good people. But here he is picking a whole bunch of people, and so many have already had to pull out because of why? Various scandals.
Yeah, Matt
Yeah.
Gates, sex trafficking with minors.
Right.
Peter Hegseth, we'll see. He's still in the running, but we know that he's all the reports are that he's a raging alcoholic.
Yep.
And there was he was accused of sexual assault, and that was handled outside of court. And the person who accused him signed an NDA.
Right.
Now he says,
He's saying that if he's not confirmed, he's going to sue her. I believe
Well,
he's made a threat if he's not confirmed.
well, isn't that a violation of the NDA in a sense?
Yeah, I mean it's a violation of so many things.
Yeah, common decency. Well, he's
Don't
a
use
Fox
that
News
piece of word.
host. You
Right.
don't put Fox News host in charge of the Defense Department. it's
And
insanity.
I believe he was a major, so he doesn't have the experience of someone of a higher rank.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of red flags. He's a walking
yeah.
red flag, I
Oh
believe.
yeah. Yeah, and we just got a comment that Carrie Lake has been appointed to lead the Voice of America. They're
Yep.
calling her the propaganda minister.
Yes.
I believe that. I haven't heard
Yeah.
she was appointed anything yet, but I
Yeah.
have to admit
Yes.
I've been trying to not watch the news too much.
Yeah.
because then the depression sets in, and
Yeah. Yeah, it's a downward spiral, I think. Um, yeah, the I'm just the recent headlines have been hey, can we get rid of the FDIC and RFK Jr. Apparently it came out that his lawyer and top ally had lobbied the FDA to get rid of polio vaccines.
Yes. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of death and suffering. You've got the
Yeah,
horsemen coming in.
yeah, all four of them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I think that, Steph and I have talked before how Trump is seen as a wrecking ball. And I get why he was elected in 2016, that he
Right.
was like a Molotov cocktail into the halls of power, right?
Right.
I didn't vote for him then, but I could understand why people
Right.
did. I don't
Right.
understand now, given everything that happened in the past 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Especially January 6th. I just don't get it.
Right. There's a false flag.
Yeah.
yeah, what I'm seeing is that no one no one takes him very serious.
Right.
There's this there's this idea, kind of like the same how people saw Boris Johnson
Mm-hmm.
in the UK, as he's too bumbling, he's too you know you can't take him serious, so you shouldn't listen to everything he says and think he's going to do all those things, but he does everything he says he's going to do.
Right.
I haven't seen him not at least attempt something he said he was going to do,
Right.
but he says he's going to do it and he goes for it. So
Yeah.
I think people are not taking into account a lot of the damage that he did. They don't see it as affecting them, at least
Right.
not yet.
Right.
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 And that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. The whole concept of interconnected consciousness has yet to really take root in the mass of people.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Right.
folks have it, but others not so much. I think that one of the things that I was also looking into, I was going through his cabinet, the people he wants to get in, they all have to be approved. And I don't trust the Congress to
Right.
put much of a fight. Maybe. I know that House of Representatives has a very, very slim margin. Senate's a little bit more. But I was also curious because I know that last time around, Trump withdrew from the Paris climate agreements, and this
Mm-hmm.
is not the time for that to happen again. So I actually looked at a couple of his people that he suggested that don't get a lot of press coverage. Secretary of Interior, who's going to oversee, all of our national forests.
Mm-hmm.
These lands, that's Doug Burgum. He's going to be the person responsible for overseeing Drill Baby Drill. He was the governor of North Dakota. He's a former software company executive. North Dakota is the third largest oil producing state in the country. Now, Burgum has promoted carbon capture technologies, but my understanding is those carbon capture technologies are not anywhere near where they ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
The other person who is of interest is the Secretary of Energy. That's Chris Wright, who was the CEO of Liberty Energy, which is the second largest fracking company in North America.
Yay.
Yeah.
Um,
And maybe that segues a little into some of the climate issues that we've had this year,
yeah.
the fires and floods, and if we're looking at just the United States right now, Hurricane Helene,
Mm-hmm.
Hurricane Milton, both of those set records in terms of hurricanes. This is exactly not the time to be cutting funding for anything with climate change, and it looks like it's just going to be completely dismantled.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Um, but we're looking at so many people who died or lost property, lost everything
Yeah.
um, during uh, those two massive hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Helene was a Category 4.
Yeah.
Milton hit the Category 5. It was on record for being the fastest escalation
Mm-hmm.
of strength of any hurricane ever. Um, it hit as a 3, but it was a 5 before it hit land and um, slowed down.
Yeah.
But this is go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's because the oceans are getting warmer. And
Yeah.
when the storms are creating over the ocean, the temperatures make stronger storms.
Mm-hmm.
hmm And it's just you understand how these work and what's happening around the globe,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the exact worst time to have someone in the White House who doesn't care about it, doesn't believe in it, doesn't,
Right.
is
Yeah.
only worried about business.
Yeah.
And, that's to me, that's bringing on the apocalypse.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to stick at this point, but just something that you said, I just feel compelled. I have to say this. Where you noted that Trump wants to focus on business, right?
hmm
And you see a lot of people who say that we should run the company like a business.
The country like a
And
business.
yeah, and I think that is absolutely incorrect
Yep, I
because
agree.
government and business have different ends. The
Mm-hmm.
end of government is supposed to be to preserve and provide rights, to preserve and provide justice, not
Mm-hmm.
make a profit. Business and government have different ends altogether.
Well, yeah, and I think so often, economy is what people focus on,
Yeah,
but we are not simply an economy. We are
right,
a community,
right.
and we have to think of each other as our fellow,
Mm-hmm.
human beings, our fellow countrymen, our fellow, we have to think of how we all function
Yeah,
as a group, not how the necessarily. I mean, you want a good economy, but you don't want to do it by throwing other people under the bus.
right.
And that's very much what went on right now. And that's why so many people stopped engaging with people who they feel voted for Trump or were
Mm.
MAGA, or, they feel completely betrayed,
Yeah,
because you're being thrown under the bus for an economy. You're throwing the climate under the bus for an
right.
economy that's eventually going to get caught up in the climate,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. There's no
None of us are
escaping.
getting out of this. Hmm?
Yeah, there's no escaping. You're right.
Mm,
So the World Meteorological Organization, their annual report, which helps inform the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change at the UN,
mhm.
has said that 2024 is on track to be the warmest year on
Yeah.
record.
Yep. Yep.
We had, I'm just going through some of the statistics I compiled to give us a sense of what's going on. Some of these have already been talked about. We had, yes, there was Helene and Milton, but there were 5 major hurricanes
Yeah.
this season. And they caused damage from Florida to North Carolina. I mean, North Carolina, they received 30 inches of rain, like within, like a day. And Helene
Well,
was the deadliest hurricane since Katrina. It killed
and
230 people in 7 states.
yeah, and it hit in an area of North Carolina, Asheville, where it had never gone that far
Right,
before.
right.
The people didn't leave because why would they?
Yeah,
They don't do that,
yeah.
but it did. So, we're going to have to be doing a lot of soul searching and, in our prep
Yeah.
for how we prepare for, people who live in areas that are prone to hurricanes, flooding, fires. We're going to really have to think about how we prep now, because
Right.
what we had in
And
the past may not be exactly how it goes forward anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to
right.
change.
Yeah.
Right. And wouldn't this be a good time to dismantle FEMA as well? I mean, that's on the chopping block as well.
Yeah. Are they threatening that?
They are.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. Um, uh, the
They have to laugh.
what else are you gonna do?
Right.
You know,
Right.
misbehave, everyone. Misbehave. Let your life be a friction to the machine. It's time to quote Thoreau again. Fires were actually not bad this year. They
Fire in New
fell
Jersey?
below. Yeah, they fell below the 10-year average.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I mean there are currently fires going on in Malibu. Let's hope that Mark Hamill's safe, and I guess everyone else there, but he's the important one.
Of course.
There were
He leads
still,
the Blue Crew.
yeah. Even though it fell below the 10-year average, there were still over 52,000 wildfires, and that burned 8.4 million acres in the U.S. alone. Last winter was the warmest on record, and this winter is set to challenge that. It's actually been pretty dry, and it's not toasty in Denver, but it's not bad. It's been around 50 or so. There was a heat wave in
50 right
India.
now, isn't it?
Yeah. There was a heat wave in India that killed more than 100 people. Some temperatures in Indian cities reached as high as 116 degrees. The majority of people in India are working in that heat, and they don't have air conditioning like we do in the U.S. There was a heat dome over Mexico that killed 125 people. Chile declared a state of catastrophe in June because of weather issues. And in this year's Hajj, over 1,300 visitors to Mecca died in the pilgrimage.
Wow.
Because temperatures in Mecca hit a record of 125 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And China, there's been record-breaking rains. They've had to evacuate thousands and thousands of people. And so far, the cost to the U.S., I mean, just last year alone, the cost to the U.S. of climate catastrophes has been $28 billion.
Wow.
Wow.
So,
And I'd also add here that we have more companies coming out and saying that pulling out of climate accords, dismantling our climate prep is actually not the way to go.
right.
Exxon came out and said this.
I know, right?
I don't think this is a smart thing. Let's not do it. So when you have corporations actually saying, we need to be more cognizant of this. We need to keep our rules in place. We need to keep our objectives in place. That's saying something,
Yeah.
Yes.
because that does impact their bottom line. So
Right. Just like it's like the military, though, as well, has rated climate change as the number one deterrent to military readiness for the United States. I mean, these are the people that are. So the military and the companies are, oh, let's be more businesslike, or let's be like the military, but you're not listening to either one.
Yeah, it was actually during George W. Bush's administration that the Defense Department came out with a report that said that climate change was the number one threat to U.S. national interest, not terrorist, climate change.
Yep.
But yet there's been this ongoing propaganda machine And we know this. There's been research done, particularly by Naomi Orestes at San Diego, who has demonstrated that there has been a propaganda campaign against climate change that has been run by the same PR firms that ran the tobacco campaigns, where they tried to get
Yeah.
people to be suspicious of the science that smoking cigarettes will kill you, right? And they use the same techniques all throughout, but yet people aren't getting this information for some reason, and they're like, it's like, why is it that so many people can't see beyond the tip of their nose?
It doesn't impact them directly, immediately. Doesn't matter.
But it will, because even
It
in the
will.
Midwest,
Yeah, and
tornadoes, we've had I've got a statistic here, I thought somewhere, where there were just like record-breaking tornadoes in the Midwest, number of tornadoes.
right.
Yeah. I think also though, I just watched something and you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember where I saw it, but it was talking about COVID and why people didn't trust the COVID signs.
Yeah.
Why people rejected the vaccines. And a lot of it had to do with, it
A
seems like a
sixth
lot
grade
of it
reading
had,
level.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, a sixth grade reading level. Sorry. Sorry.
That is part of it. But another part of it is that there seems to be a lot of noise out there. The signal to noise ratio isn't
Right.
great for us. And you don't really have anyone that people trust giving out the information.
Right. Or you
it's
have
coming
people
down,
that they trust giving out misinformation.
yeah, you have, it's when we look at what was going on during in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and Milton, there were so many conspiracy theories that rivaled what was going on in the news. And then you have a news that you don't always trust, right? You
Right.
have a lot
Right.
of mainstream media news that isn't giving us all the information or is also contributing to the misinformation. So people
Right.
don't feel there's much they can trust.
Right.
Yeah.
It undermines the science that's out there.
Or at the best, they're giving equal weight to the misinformation as they do the
Exactly.
real news.
Well, and that is part of the media problem. There's this known effect that's called bias balance. Because, and before I go into that, I just wanted to say that I think that this is another area where we can actually find common ground. I'm friends with my high school English teacher on Facebook, and my hometown is like Trump country, ground zero for Trump country, and she's not. She's Democrat. She used to work at some of the polling sites, and I saw her comment somewhere that she's like, I can't talk to these people. Where can I find common ground? And it's like, but there is common ground. And one of those places I think is the media, because, Trump does, he talks about, fake news, fake news, fake news. And for him, that's anything that's negative. But there is an ongoing problem with the media in our country, right?
Right.
Noam Chomsky pointed this out. It's all about creating necessary illusions to manufacture consent. And what happens in the media when it comes to like climate is it's always, well, here's a scientist that says, yeah, things are really bad. And then you have one other person who's like, yeah, it's not that bad. And that other person is never a scientist. Usually they are a representative of some kind of think tank. Conservative think tank at that, but they're treated as being equal. John Oliver did a really great little segment on this, on balance is bias, where he shows what it ought to look like. So you had like the one skeptic surrounded by like 98 other scientists who are like,
Right.
shut up. This is a real thing. And as long as the media isn't presenting it as it ought to be presented,
Yeah.
people aren't going to believe it.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that just goes back to why you're asking why people this is something that's going to affect them. Why aren't they getting it?
Mm-hmm.
It's right there. It's when you have a media that is, you know, working towards ratings and money
Mm-hmm.
and
Hmm.
not working towards the common good, which is what the fifth estate is or the fourth estate is supposed to do. Um, then there's your answer. You have too much propaganda, too much equal time not being real equal time.
Yeah.
Right.
Weren't,
Um,
weren't we supposed to do it? I don't think we did it. I mean, I'm old and my memory is not the way it should be, but weren't we supposed to do an episode this past year on the media apocalypse?
That was on our
yeah,
to-do list, but we didn't quite
Yeah.
get to it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So,
And
okay, for
I think we need to do that
2025,
next
maybe.
year.
Yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Yep.
I'll add that
Because I
one to
do
my
believe
list.
we've really reached that media apocalypse of what can you trust? What's out there? You have
Right.
a lot of deep fake stuff going out there with people using
Right.
AI to
Mm-hmm.
generate
It's
things.
only going to get worse. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Yeah. I want to take just a second here to invite people to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel here for Rebel Spirit Radio. We're also going to show a video here shortly of Jeremy's winter drink of a rum hot chocolate, I think.
Yes.
And so show both the Rebel Spirit Radio and the Kill Devil website some love, like and subscribe. I think there's a way to actually even donate a couple dollars underneath. Just click on that dollar sign.
And don't
So
forget you have a Patreon account.
I do. I've got a Patreon account,
Ooh.
rebelspiritradio.com or Patreon / Rebel Spirit Radio. I think that's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. Big things coming in the future. Big things coming in the future. Let's. Do you want to look at the hot chocolate now? Because this has been like a downer. I'm bummed. Let's drink. let's look at Jeremy's latest recipe.
Let's make some rum hot chocolate. Hi, I'm Jer. Welcome to Kill Devil, where we focus on rum and cocktails. Today we are going to make some rum hot chocolate. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning to the channel, welcome back. In either case, I hope you enjoy this drink. When I was researching this drink, I came across a lot of hot chocolate recipes that had booze in them. Most of them had vodka. I don't know why you drink vodka over rum, but what do I know? I even found one that had tequila in it, which was interesting to me. I didn't go with that one either. Again, I'm a rum guy, and we're doing rum hot chocolate. Even amongst the ones that had rum in them, there's a lot of variation. Some of them just had rum, some had white rum, some had spice rum, some had dark rum. Some had liqueur on top of it. We're going to do what works for me. And if you have something that you prefer, feel free to let me know what it is in the comments down below. A note on the rum. As I said earlier, you can use any rum in your hot chocolate that you'd like. I'm going to be using Mount Gay Eclipse today, but I've used spice rum, I've used white rums. They all work. They work in different ways, but they all work. So find a rum that you like and mix your hot chocolate with it and call it good. To make this rum hot chocolate recipe, we are going to start with the rum. I'm using 1.5 ounces of my rum. 1.5 ounces is 45 milliliters. And I'm going to put it in a tempered glass. You can use a mug if you'd prefer. Next, 3/4 of an ounce of creme de cacao. I have tried other liqueurs in here as well. I particularly like cherry liqueurs like a Hearing. Today we're using creme de cacao, 3/4 of an ounce, which is 22.5 milliliters. And we're using this because it's my wife's favorite. Now I'm going to go heat up my hot chocolate. I'll be right back with you. And here we have some homemade hot chocolate. I do have a recipe for this on the channel. Link will be down below in the video if you want to try it for yourself. Otherwise, if you just have some cocoa powder and want to mix that with water, go for it. It's not the best. This is better, but do what you like. And I'm just going to top off my glass with this. Set this aside. Garnish. Some people like marshmallows. Some people like Ready Whip. I prefer Neither usually, but we're using Ready Whip because it takes nicer pictures. Do I have to shake? I think I shake. Make it as pretty as you'd like. And I can't make it very pretty. And finally, I'm going to grate a little bit of chocolate on top. Oh, that broke. It broke again. And there you have it. Rum hot chocolate. Drink with good spirits. Question of the day. What is your favorite booze to mix with your hot chocolate? Let me know in the comments down below. Note that there are ways to support the channel if you're so inclined. I have t-shirts. If you'd like a t-shirt, you can have a t-shirt too. Contact me through any of the social media links down below. We'll make sure you get a t-shirt. While you're there, might as well follow, subscribe, do whatever you do on those things. Finally, if you've made it this far, give me a like, give me a subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't mix out on any other delicious rum cocktails that I make. And until next time, cheers.
We should make t-shirts.
Let's make some rum hot chocolate.
Sorry, I accidentally hit, but we should make t-shirts. Cocktail Apocalypse t-shirts.
We
Happy hour at the
definitely
end of the
should.
world. Yeah, that's on the project
wear
for
that.
next year. Yeah, so me too. Me too. All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for that. Yeah, and don't forget, visit
delicious.
Jeremy's website, Kill DeVille, YouTube /Kill DeVille. He has amazing cocktail recipes, all rum. Yeah, I'm not a big rum drinker, but I do drink rum every time we do this. It's the bamboo or something, and this is the very first time I've ever actually refilled my glass because things have been so. Man, this was
the
a
end of the
year.
year.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
year, man. It was a year.
Yeah.
All right,
And
so
it's funny. I keep thinking, did something happen before November? Just-
yeah.
I don't know. I know something did, but
Yeah. But that's the thing, I mean, I remember, looking back at like past elections, because we're still kind of lingering on the election, in a sense. I remember when Obama was elected president that I cried, and it wasn't, like, oh my God, no, but it was just this relief after 8 years of Bush. Right.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, I wish George W. Bush was president again.
yeah.
But we had 4 years. We had 4 years of like, where it wasn't like every day. I saw someone online that commented that, the previous Trump administration, they woke up every day with the feeling like an infant with a revolver in their hands. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how I felt the whole time. And that's how I feel now. It's the little kid running to the outlet with the fork, and I can't do anything to stop it.
Well, if we could go back a little bit in the year to April.
Yeah.
April.
We have the solar eclipse occur.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Thank you. Yes, we were going to talk about that.
And we had the solar eclipse occur in Aries on the 8th. There was the total solar eclipse that occurred. It went across the United States. It went across Mexico, United States, and I think eventually into Europe. But during this time, there was also a comet that the Pons Brooks comet, and in astrology, comets always portend something big, right? Something massive going on. And I found out that the comet in April, the Pons Brooks comet, has another name, which is the Devil's Comet.
Ooh.
And it has to do with the fact that during certain times as it's going through space, it appears to have two ice horns on it. So
Hmm.
it was nicknamed the Devil's Comet. Apparently, it's come around a lot of times. A lot of times, it has come around during periods of unrest. But just just a little bit, well, during that period where it was at its peak from the 8th to 24th, on what was it, the April 12th, is when Trump actually laid out his plan for the country during the time interview, time did
Now,
an interview with Trump.
was this a plan or was it a concept of a plan?
That's the concept of a
This
plan
is
technique.
basically where he lays out the deportations.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
he starts talking about that. So, yeah, I found that interesting during the Devil's Comet going through.
Wasn't there
We have
wasn't there prior to the election in 2016 a major eclipse as well?
Yes,
And it seems
there
to
was
if
also an eclipse that went across the United States as well in a different
right.
direction, I believe.
Yeah, but there's like some weird connection between that eclipse and the one of this past year, if I understand correctly.
Well, they both went across the U.S.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Different line though, right? Different
Yeah.
path.
Yes.
yeah,
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 but
that's
still
what I was
across the
saying.
U.S. Yeah,
Yeah, it went in the opposite direction, I believe.
yeah,
Um, so you know, foretold by a comet and an eclipse.
yeah,
Neither one great.
yeah. Yeah, and we want to talk a little bit about the astrology, and I think that this is a good point to just say, I know I'm going to. This may be a little bit surprising for you, Stephanie, but
No.
from here on out, you are our astrological expert on
Hmm.
any
Oh
episode that
crap!
we do. So if you want to bring in some of the astrology, there you go. Because the big event, and we had a whole episode on this, was
Mhm.
Pluto moving into Aquarius. And it had done so a couple of times, but now
Mhm.
it's there to stay.
Yeah, and the first time it did that it ventured into it first ventured into Aquarius shortly in 2023, but then it did again in March of 2024, and it stayed there for a couple months and then retrograded back into Capricorn for a bit. And then on November 19th, it moved into Aquarius for good. It's going to stay there for 20 years. You could see that episode that we did just, when was it, last week? Or not last week, last month?
Last month. Yeah. Yep.
Not last week. Not sure why I said that. But now that it's there, I mean, we're seeing some Aquarian things play out already. You know, I think one of the Aquarian, Pluto and Aquarius things we're seeing is uh, a lot of plutocrats in power.
Bingo.
People
Yeah.
Billionaires.
getting
Yeah.
billionaires, millionaires getting positions in Trump's cabinet. But also, Elon Musk is very much into the um, tech side of things. You know, with
Yeah.
X, which we all still call Twitter,
Yeah.
Right.
and
I don't.
you know, SpaceX and so forth. So you have a lot of tech aspects
Mm.
that are not that are looking sort of underworldy, you know, more dystopian in terms of tearing apart the structures. His whole point in being in the cabinet is to take things to government efficiency by
Right.
tearing it down, by taking it out.
You
Um,
know, I
but
just wanted.
also, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to interject because on the Rebel Spirit Radio podcast, I've talked to a lot of people, and Chris Bache talks about this in his book LSD and the
Hmm.
Mind of the Cosmos, I think it is.
Hmm.
That a lot of the people are saying that we're in the process of an initiation.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I've been thinking about that a lot. And, in a shamanic initiation, one of the first steps is, there's an initiation, there's always that going into the underground, right? Into the
Hmm.
Right.
underworld. But in shamanic initiations, there's always this like dismembering.
Yes.
And I've
Yes.
had a lot of guests say, like, we need to remember who we are. And
Yeah.
it seems to me that we are at that beginning phase of dismemberment. And
Yeah.
it's going to
Yes.
be painful and ugly, and there's going to be a lot of gnashing of teeth.
Yeah.
But
And
it is necessary. So I just wanted to interject that with what you had just said. So I apologize. So please go forward.
yeah. Well, now I don't remember. No.
Oh, yeah.
Um. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. It is a painful process that we have to go through.
Mm,
Um. If we look at the initiatory aspects of the Eleusinian mysteries, right?
mm,
It
Mm.
was, you start that with a kind of a terrifying beginning,
right.
and then you gradually get a semblance of what's going on, and you emerge, you know, changed, transformed. It's always transformative.
Yeah.
Right.
It's something that takes you from, it's like a rite of passage. It takes you
Mm,
from, where you are
Hmm.
right now to something totally different.
yeah.
And that
Right.
does look like what we're about to embark on, um,
Yeah.
as we go through
Yep.
these changes. And, you know, 2025 seems to be some where we really get into that Pluto and Aquarius transformation, and we'll go into that more next year.
Mm,
But I think keep it in mind for those who listen to us regularly that
yeah.
this is going to be a reoccurring theme for a
Mm,
long while. And things are going to get bad, but they are going to get better
yeah.
as well. It's just a long process.
Yeah. Since
Um,
we're talking about the astrology a little bit, we have a guest here who commented Neptune S, which I assume is Neptune Saturn. So I thought that I know that you had several things you wanted to talk about in terms of the astrology of 2025, including the Neptune Saturn conjunction. I think there's a Neptune square with something or other.
okay.
And as well, Pluto being out of bounds. So,
Yeah. Let's talk
Stephanie,
about
Yeah.
that.
take it away.
And that's going to be more next year, so I don't want
Yeah.
to get into it too much. But yeah,
Right.
Saturn and Neptune, and Saturn square Uranus, these are things that are going to really set off. There's a lot of stuff going on about UFOs, and I'm going to have to rely on you about the
Yes.
UFOs. Um, and I really wasn't prepared to talk about 2025,
Okay, that's fair.
but
Right.
but
But,
um, but I do know that you have that, those alignments going on that are going to be very big in uh, in the next year and very big in the next 20 years.
hmm,
But yeah, there is Pluto going on Pluto Unbound, where it basically goes out of because of its orbit being
Hmm.
uh, not just elliptical, but way
Retro.
out of whack
hmm,
compared to the other planets. It goes out of bounds sometimes, and when it goes out of bounds, it is said to be in the full power of its sign of what it does,
hmm,
what that planet represents. And Pluto obviously is underworld. Um, in Aquarius, it's that technological side. Um, so it basically has its full strength of Pluto.
hmm,
Um, and it's going to be going out of bounds for 10 years from 2025 to 2035.
Wow.
And as it goes out of bounds. I know the history, and I can't bring up all of it right now, but it does coincide with revolutions, or at
Mm,
least when it's out of bounds to the south, which it will be. It
yeah.
coincides with revolutions, and a lot of discord because you're throwing off a tyrannical system.
Isn't
Mm.
Um,
the United States is having their Pluto return?
it did already.
Yeah. Well, it depends. It depends on which chart you look at. I think the Sibley chart looks at the birth of the U.S. with the signing of the Declaration of Independence, but you can
Mhm.
also look at the chart about the when the Constitution was approved.
Yeah, it's constitutional ratification.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could look at it in different ways, but according to the Sibley chart, it has already had its
Mm,
uh, Pluto return. Of course, when Pluto retrogrades, and it
yeah.
kind of goes through that again. Um, but for us right now, what we seem to be going through is a radical change, and it's just going to be very
Mm.
painful until it's
Right.
better. You know,
Wouldn't historically speaking, um, I know it's been around a lot longer, but I'm thinking in terms of revolutions. Shouldn't we also be looking at France? Because wouldn't their Pluto
Mm.
return kind of be shortly after the US's Pluto return?
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about France, so
Yeah.
Right.
you'll have to talk
Yeah.
And
about that.
I don't
The
know. I'm
French had
just
some.
thinking.
I was going to say the French had some really good ideas on how to deal with plutocrats, didn't they?
Yeah. Yes.
Just saying.
Yep. Yep.
But we
Yep.
are
Yep. Yep.
also going to go into our Uranus return.
Oh.
Um,
Mm.
and that, if you remember, Uranus, um, its its home sign, where its domicile is Aquarius,
Mm.
Mm.
and so the U.S. will be doing its Uranus return. Uranus is the planet of surprise, of the planet of
Yay.
revolution, the
Mm.
planet of discord, the planet of get up and fight.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
it
but that's needed though. And again,
yeah
I know our conversation earlier, I would imagine that some people who maybe MAGA might have heard just like a few words of this, like, oh, I'm not going to listen to that. They're a bunch of liberals.
yeah
But the point is that I think there's a lot more in common, and there are
Yeah.
places where we can meet because there is this underlying frustration about how our government has
Yeah.
operated for so long,
Mm-hmm.
getting us involved in unnecessary wars, for example.
Mm-hmm.
yeah
And the education system is failing people. I talk to
Yep.
people in Europe, and I feel like even though I've got a PhD, I feel like I'm a high schooler, you know. Um, and I've got a friend in England who teaches at a secondary school, and they've shared some of the work of their students, and I'm like, I wish that my students actually provided work at that level. I just graded a paper where the student didn't even know to capitalize I
yeah
Wow.
or owl or I'd or things like that. I'm like, you should have learned this in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
but we're also coming up to a time where people have a different way of communicating and a different way
Right.
of
Mm,
self-expression that goes out of bounds of
yeah,
the way you and I were brought up.
right,
And I'm
right,
going to
right.
give that a little credit there because we are not products of the digital age. We were immigrants to the digital age. Well,
Mm,
they were born in it.
yeah,
Right.
And
Right.
and I will say that, that's another Aquarian aspect. We're coming up to people who, they talk in emojis, they or write in emojis, they write in text speak. and it gets the point across. They know what they're saying.
Yeah.
And because you and I aren't necessarily up on all of that,
Right.
it's like we have this bridge that's a little foggy,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
and I'm
So
not
it's not.
saying that. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say it's not necessarily the grammar that's the issue. It's the quality of
No.
thought that we want to look at.
Yeah, there is a quality of thought problem. I think we do need to examine what's going on in the education system, definitely. But I also
Right.
think we have to look at the fact that there's completely different technology. There's a different way that people communicate. These are all things that are going to have different generations clashing at this
Right.
point.
Right.
But, every generation thought that of the previous generation, and eventually there's this sort of leveling as they each one gets older.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's definitely a problem. There's definitely a lack of certain type of thought going on.
Mm.
But I also think there's a lot of people who, especially young people, who don't have the means that we had.
Mm.
They
Right.
don't have the same healthcare that we used to have when we were younger. They don't have the same, school systems. They don't have the same advantages, or
Hmm.
things have changed a lot, and I think we need to look at all those things and also
Right.
understand where
Right.
our own technological limits are hitting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that opens up a conversation to AI. But
Hmm.
before we
Right.
move on, we do have a comment. One of the guests that I had onto the Rebel Spirit Radio podcast, Maya Daoust, um, and her book was Astrology and the Shadow Self, I think. Um,
Mhm.
and the comment was that she noted that the Pluto Aquarius, that the shadow of that, because the way that she did this was the shadow was the opposite side, the opposite sign of the chart.
Yeah.
And so for her, the shadow of
Leo?
Aquarius is going to be Leo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
yeah.
Which is all ego, right?
Uh, well, yeah, it's a lot
Kinda.
about ego. It's a
Yeah.
lot about, showmanship. It's a lot
Yeah.
about
Oh, Trump
uh,
is a showman, if nothing else.
Yeah.
doing things very publicly. Um, so you you have that aspect of the apprentice, right? We were
Yeah.
talking about, Trump's cabinet being, celebrity apprentice. And that's kind of what it is. We're looking at all that going,
Mm.
who here isn't a billionaire? Who here isn't,
Right.
uh, isn't something already in the mind of the public? Like, we all know who Dr. Oz is,
Yeah.
Right.
and, RFK. Um, so yeah, there's that. I think they were also talking about Neptune a bit, and we could use Neptune probably as a little bit of a segue, because a lot of Neptune, especially Neptune conjunct Saturn, has to do with, which will come up next year, with UFOs.
Mm.
What's the other word for it? UPAs?
UAP. Yeah.
UAP.
Yeah.
Um, a lot to do with extraterrestrials, a lot to do with conspiracy behind it, and possibly even um, hoaxes.
Mm.
Mm.
So, do you want
Yeah.
to talk about the sightings that we've had this year?
I always
The
want to
drone?
talk about the sightings. I always want to
Yeah.
talk about the drones. So yeah, and we'll jump back because there's something else that I wanted to talk about that goes
Hmm.
along with Trump and various other things. But yes, so currently as we're recording this on the December 14th, December 14th. there has been for almost a month now a series of sightings. Uh, we hear them about New Jersey, and these are drones, right? But it's not just New Jersey. There are sightings in several East Coast states, New York, Maryland, Connecticut. Some of these drones, and I'm going to put drones in quotes, are the size of cars.
Wow.
These are not
I didn't know that.
necessarily, some they're saying they're the size of cars, and I've heard from like a little mini to the size of a school bus. So who
Wow.
knows, right?
Wow.
But this has been happening since mid-November. It's expanding to other states. I've heard about drone sightings in Colorado. There are drone sightings in California, which doesn't surprise me. That's San Diego. We've got some politicians, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and Andy Kim wrote letters to the FBI, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Department of Homeland Defense asking for an explanation of what's
Wow.
going on. People are reporting swarms of these things, like dozens upon dozens. And no one knows who's operating them. There are no specific details on the manufacturer, the model. Apparently, they are eluding capture. It's legal to fly the drones, but no one knows, and it's multiple states, and they are apparently untrackable. They are undetectable by radar, and there's been at least a couple of people that have said that these are happening worldwide.
Wow.
In Australia, the UK, I think Germany as well. One of the answers that I've seen or suggested possibilities, because the government says that there's no known specific or credible threats, and that it's not a national security or public safety threat. Which one person I saw was like, well, but if that's the case, maybe they're drones from the U.S. government, and they just don't want to reveal necessarily what's happening. Maybe there's a bigger threat. We don't know. But I think that if these are happening worldwide, that kind of demolishes that possibility, right? One person reported seeing at least 50 of them coming from the ocean.
Wow.
So no one knows. No one knows currently what the heck is happening. They look like they were, from the videos, they look like they might have been manufactured here on planet Earth. We don't know. But the government's like, it's not from a U.S., they're not U.S. drones. They're not foreign-made drones. Well, if they're not, where then are they coming from? What exactly is happening?
So, Nick, were you asking about the adult in the room? Maybe the adults in the room have shown up.
I'm hoping. I keep hoping that, it's like aliens and they, like land and are like, okay, look, we've been watching you people, and the last thing in the world you need to be doing is putting that person in charge of the United States.
Right.
Don't do it. Or maybe they're time travelers, or like, look, let's show you two streams. Here's where he won. Here's where Kamala won. We're going to show you the futures.
I think that would be interesting. I mean, it would certainly be an apocalypse for a lot of people in terms of how do you wrap your mind around the fact that we are not only not alone in the universe, but they came to say hello.
Yeah.
And that, that changes everything, in terms of what people believe and their faith. How do we deal with this? How do we become part of a larger community of beings? But I think also the thing about Saturn conjunct Neptune is that idea of not just a hoax, but illusions, or delusions, Neptune can be very spiritual, but it can also be part of it, the illusions that we have about stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas
Right.
Saturn is more about the mundane, the real world, get shit done sort of idea. So you have this very real, tangible thing in Saturn hitting Neptune, and that merger of what's real, what's not real,
Yeah.
that you have to sort of contend with. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's a it will be fascinating to see what happens then.
Yeah.
And also it's interesting, that it was coming from the ocean. Um, it's Saturn and no, it will be in Aries then. Right now they're in Pisces, which is a
Mm,
water sign.
right.
So it makes sense right now that you have this watery aspect to it.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I guess
yeah.
I guess we'll see what happens when they go conjunct. I believe it will be in the sign of Aries.
Yeah.
So it's a fire sign, cardinal
Mm,
sign, something is getting going.
mm.
Um,
I also want to mention that pilots in Oregon have been seeing UAPs as well. They're not identifying them as
mm,
drones, but more of the kind of traditional UFO. Um, but yeah, this is one of the things that has been suggested as, as you mentioned before, Pluto and Aquarius is that some
mhm,
people are saying, yep, we're going to have finally the revelation of extraterrestrials or whatever they are,
Mhm.
interdimensional beings. We don't know. But
Are you familiar with the story Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke?
no,
Well, this is the
I've
whole
heard of it,
idea
but
that
I'm not. Yeah.
the whole
yeah, I've
idea is
heard
that
of it.
aliens
Yeah.
finally come to Earth and reveal themselves to and bring people into galactic civilization, and they are the adults in the room. They correct
Yeah.
society, etc. I don't know. It just kind of
Yeah.
reminded me of this.
Yeah.
Also, like the day the Earth stood still, right?
Yes, exactly. Right.
It's an idea of yeah, the adults have showed up.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that you are referring to the 1950s Claude Rainey Day the Earth Stood Still, not the all love to Keanu Reeves, but not his
Hmm.
version. I was actually assigning. I did this a couple of times. I just finished teaching a class that was religion and the human quest, and
Okay.
the chair of the department. I was so thrilled he let me teach Diana Pasulka's American Cosmic, which looks at UFOs as a mythology / religion in the making.
Mm.
And maybe there's still something going on there because there are
Yeah.
definitely hierophanies. There are definitely a eruption into normality of possibly the sacred. You know,
Right.
so. But yes, I kept telling students, that their homework over the break, even though the class is over, is to watch the original Day the Earth Stood Still. Yeah. So we've been at this for a little while here, but I thought that one of the other things that we probably should talk about just a little bit, and this kind of goes back into the themes that we've been addressing, especially with the election, is the murder of the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian
Mm.
Thompson, by
Yes.
allegedly Luigi Mangione. Because this was interesting, and I find it apocalyptic. It's revelatory in the
Right.
sense that so many people online turned him into something of a folk hero.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, and
Mythology in the making. Right.
yeah, I to bring in some of the astrology again. This happened. The murder actually happened 2 days before what we call the Mars retrograde.
Mm,
So Mars is going retrograde in the sign of Leo, and that happened on the 6th. So the murder took place maybe 2 days before it,
mm,
and the capture of Luigi Mangione happened on the 9th. of December. So in between, you know, you have Mars going retrograde in the sign of Leo. And, this idea of fiery rage,
Mm.
I think, has become kind of endemic in the United States right now because people
Mm-hmm.
started talking about all of their gripes with healthcare right now. All of the, I mean, and it is apocalyptic to a lot of people in that they find out
Mm-hmm.
that they thought they had coverage, they do not
Mm.
have coverage. This
Yeah.
isn't just people who are without. These are people who think they have it and then they're denied.
Right. Right.
And the amount of rage going through the people posting about this is fascinating to me. People wanted
Mm-hmm.
to hide this man. They didn't want him to be caught
Right.
because
Right.
everyone, saw him as the healthcare Robin Hood, of
Mm-hmm.
whether or not he is, probably doesn't even matter at this point. He's actually has a place in the American imagination, the
Right.
American zeitgeist, I guess, for healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of hate towards McDonald's because it was either a
Mm-hmm.
guest or an employee.
Employee. Yeah.
Yeah, someone
Employee.
referred to McSnitches.
Yeah.
And of course, my response was McSnitches get McStitches.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've known that our healthcare system here in the United States is broken.
Right.
And, I'm grateful for the Affordable Care Act, which is the same as Obamacare, because I have asthma. That was a pre-existing condition. And that's only a thing in the United States. Everywhere else is
Right.
just medical history, right?
Right.
But I
Right.
was denied coverage. But yet, even what I get is so expensive. And the companies can just say, no, you don't need that.
Right.
And so, again, that's a point where I think people can come together. We can come together, across these political divides, which are in so many ways just created by people in power
Yes.
and the media. And it's like, let's stop hating each other and put our hatred where it belongs with the freaking billionaires.
Yep.
And that was another interesting thing, right? Because
Yeah.
people on both sides, whether you were, left, right, MAGA,
Yeah.
complete socialist, communist type, whatever you were, you looked at that, and most people had the same reaction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think we want to say murder is never the right choice.
Right. We want to say that.
That is always going to be wrong.
Unless it's capital punishment, then apparently
But
it's
we
fine.
also have to look at the fact that this person, this CEO, approved of legitimized murder of how many people who died.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Because
and it
he
wasn't even
he
him
used it-
approving.
It was an AI,
Yeah.
right? There was no
Yeah.
appeal because it was an AI.
Right.
And so, that rage was justifiable.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot of rage, and it's all justifiable, I think. I don't think that Trump is the answer. I mean, I still
Right,
see him
right.
as
No.
a Molotov cocktail, or Stephanie have referred to him as a wrecking ball into the halls of power. But I've kind of, as much as I loathe the man, I've come to the place where I'm like, I think that this is what has to happen.
Right.
Well, this is definitely like an eye-opening
Yeah.
thing. I mean, a lot of Americans knew how bad the healthcare system was. They've been living it, but this like reignited that in our collective memory right now. And it doesn't seem to be abating
Right.
because people are just like, we have no appeal. We have nowhere to go to. We can't get stuff approved. And this is, I have United Healthcare.
Mm.
That my company has chosen to go with them. And that means I'm stuck with them because it's tied to my job.
Right.
Right.
It's like we can't even shop around, a lot of us,
Yeah.
Yep.
for it, because we're getting it from, it's our company, rather than, something like a single payer
Yeah.
um, Medicare, or sorry, healthcare for all.
Right. Yeah. Fun times. Fun
Hmm.
times. So we've covered quite a bit. We're talking about the election. The one thing that we have not talked about, I don't think, and I know that we usually keep these about an hour and a half, but
Right.
just a few minutes. I think we have to talk because I see this as being apocalyptic, and I think that this is worthy of a episode in 2025 to vote it entirely to it. The issue of Israel and
Hmm.
Palestine. Amnesty International. I mean, this is clearly apocalyptic for the Palestinians.
Right.
But Amnesty International has come out and said that Israel is guilty of committing genocide, as have a few
Right.
other groups. The Palestinians have been left with no electricity, no water, no
Hmm.
food, no fuel. They've been referred to by people in the Israeli government as that they are fighting human animals. They are dehumanizing these people.
Right. Right.
There have been 43,000 people killed. Over 13,000 of them have been children. Over 97,000 have been injured. 2 million have been displaced.
Hmm.
And what Amnesty International does is they base everything on I think it's the 1948, I could be wrong on the year there, Genocide Convention, right after World War II.
Yep.
And there's a list of 5 different acts that a country has to commit to be guilty of genocide. And Israel apparently is guilty of 3 out of the 5.
Wow.
Destruction of essential infrastructure,
Hmm.
mass displacement under inhumane and unsanitary conditions, and obstruction of life saving aid.
Yep.
And the big thing is intent to destroy. And the UN Special Committee cited statements by senior Israeli officials that may indicate intent to destroy. Israel's been leveling entire cities.
Yep.
They've
Mhm.
been leveling agricultural lands, cultural and religious sites. Large areas of Gaza are now uninhabitable.
Hmm.
Hunger and disease are running rampant. There are reports of parents having to dig up the remains of their children. I can't think of anything more apocalyptic.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah, certainly their lives have been just decimated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can look at, the what Hamas initially did, um as being, you know, the wrong action, bad, definitely problematic, and Israel has its right to defend itself.
Right.
But Israel seems to have gone on a completely genocidal response, rather than something to measure it with what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, and yeah, the idea that um, they're living through this, and it's just one atrocity after the next.
Right.
They have no, they felt for a very long time no hope, and now it's, their worst fears have been met
Hmm.
with what's going on there right now. Um, I yeah, I have no idea how you live through something like that.
Yeah.
How you come out of that on the other end,
Yeah.
if you survive it.
Yeah. Well, I think that, again, I think that this is worthy of its own episode next year
Right.
because I know
Right.
that, Stephanie, you've got a good background. I'm not putting you on the spot right now, but I know you've got a good background on apocalyptic thought, especially pertaining to Israel.
Hmm.
So I think that's something that we should investigate further in the
Yeah.
future.
Oh yeah, and I think there's like in the United States, there's interesting how there's this divide between it, either wholesale for it, wholesale against it. You know,
Yeah.
it's really
Right.
divided us here. I think um amongst, I mean, there's more. There seems to be more anti-Israeli response in Israel itself
Yes. Yes.
um,
Hmm.
than there
Right.
is in the United States at the moment. So it's that's an interesting dynamic as well.
Yeah, and that does not get reported about how much the
No.
Israeli citizens are opposed to what their government is doing.
Right.
Hmm.
You know.
It's
So,
pretty
our
substantial.
yeah, it is. It's very substantial. So it's been quite the apocalyptic year. Um,
Hmm.
uh, so, and someone just commented that we're near to World War III. Maybe.
Uh, Alice, I would say that we're probably in it right
Yeah,
now. And
yeah,
when
that
we
could
look
be.
back, we'll say, it began sometime in 2024 or
Yeah,
Right.
2023 even.
yeah,
I think we'll see that.
yeah, yeah. Probably. I agree with that. All right. So, do you two have any final thoughts?
No. No.
This,
Let me off
unholy.
this rock.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
When's the mothership coming?
You messed up.
yeah, yeah. Kind
I
of at
remember
this.
we had a congressman in Ohio. His name was Jim Trafficant. He's since has passed away. But he used to end all of his speeches in Congress with "Beam me up, Scotty."
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
I understand it now. I'm kind of thinking about
yeah.
it.
Well, either way, I mean, either we are, if there is, the aliens are going to reveal themselves, maybe we can finally fix ourselves or something, or if they are coming as an invading force, because that's what people often think, maybe that will
Right.
unite us as well.
Hmm.
But who knows? Who knows? We'll see. We have plenty to
Right.
talk
I
about for
I think there's going to be a
2025.
plot twist, and we're going
Yeah,
to find out that
yeah.
they're actually human time travelers.
Yeah, maybe, or some other sort of interdimensional being. I'm totally down with that as well. All right. Well, thank you both for joining me. And final shout out again, reminder to please like and subscribe to Rebel Spirit Radio and the Kill Devil YouTube channels. Show us some love. I believe there's a way to make a donation on YouTube if you want. You can also go to the Rebel Spirit Radio Patreon. But regardless, like and subscribe. And we will be back next year looking at this continuous unfolding of the apocalypse.
Yes.
All right. So, do any of you, either of you, excuse me, want to share any of your socials or anything else before we call this quits?
I'll just post
Uh,
a link to my YouTube channel in the
Okay.
comments down below. So if you want to follow me there.
Okay.
on Blue Sky, I am the April Fool. There's a dash between all the words there, so you can find me on Blue Sky.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, and Rebel Spirit Radio is on Blue Sky now too. So, yeah, yeah, keep track. Yeah, we had to leave X because he doesn't need any support. All right. Well,
Right.
thank you. Happy holidays to both of you. Happy holidays to all of our viewers and listeners. And we will see you again for Happy Hour at the End of the World.
Bye bye.